I am going to share 4 incidents that happened to me. Please listen carefully. Without further ado, let me begin. The story starts towards the end of 2013, when I was a student of Class 4. Due to my father's government job, he was transferred to the Patenga area in Chittagong. A new residential area was developed on a large plot of land right next to my father's office. Back then, there were only 4 or 5 buildings. We moved into the 5th floor of a 6-story building along with several other families. Our building was about 50 meters away from the main road. Although the place remained very quiet at night, occasionally a freight truck would pass by on that road. I used to listen to a lot of paranormal radio shows. I'd fall asleep listening to them at night, so I used to record the shows on an FM recorder to listen to the remaining parts later. At that time, my cousin used to stay in my room. He worked for a company where his job shift followed a 7 days day shift, 7 days night shift pattern. Naturally, when he was at work during the night, I had to sleep alone. Our house had 3 bedrooms and a dining room. The next incident occurred on a day in May 2016, when I was in Class 7. My cousin was on night duty that day. By the time I finished my school studies, it was quite late at night. I cannot recall the exact time as I didn't check the clock. For some reason, I was feeling very scared that night. There was a haunting silence everywhere, not a single sound except for the tick-tock of the clock, which I could hear very clearly. I was sitting at one end of the table. Suddenly, everything on the opposite end of that terrifying table shook violently. My water glass fell onto the table with a loud thud. I saw no one in the dining room, and my body began to tremble with fear instantly. I ran straight to my parents' room. I wondered if I had misheard it, but the next morning everything seemed normal. My cousin returned for the day shift, so for the next 7 days, I had no trouble sleeping, and my fear faded away. I thought such incidents wouldn't happen to me again. But was that really true? No. A few months after this, a similar incident occurred. It was late at night by the time I finished my studies. It was 10 minutes past 1 a.m. My cousin had left for the office, and my parents were asleep. Recalling the previous incident, I was feeling a bit scared. I realized I had to cross the dining room to get to my mother's room. When I entered the dining room, I saw someone who looked like my mother, sitting in the shadows at the far end of the table. She was wearing white clothes with a light veil, her head bowed down in the darkness. I felt a bit relieved, but a strange thing happened. As soon as I entered the dining room, I felt an intense cold. The balcony was closed, so how did the room get so cold? Anyway, since the food had gone cold, I said, "Ma, please heat up the food for me." I repeated it and said, "Heat the food and serve it. I'm coming from the washroom." At that moment, I heard a sound like a low groan or a moan. I thought she might be getting up to heat the food. I went to the washroom to freshen up. After 7 or 8 minutes, I came out and saw the dining room light was still off. In the dim light, I saw my mother had changed her seat and was now sitting in the chair next to mine, with her head still bowed. I didn't say anything, went to my room, and while wiping my face with a towel, I walked toward the light switch. The switch was right behind where she was sitting. As I got closer to her, I felt a bone-chilling cold. I flipped the switch, and the next moment when I looked back, there was no one in the dining room. She was sitting right there. Where could she have gone so fast? I thought maybe she went to sleep. But how could she move so silently? I checked the kitchen, but no one was there. Then I went to my parents' room and found the door locked. How did she lock the door so quickly without making a sound? I wasn't terrified yet, though I couldn't understand why the room was so cold. I sat down to eat and touched the food. It was freezing cold, as if it had been in the freezer. I felt angry. Why would she put the food in the freezer? I ate a little and went to sleep. The next morning, I told my mother irritably, "I told you to heat the food. Why did you take it out of the freezer instead?" My mother was shocked and asked, "What are you talking about? When did you tell me?" When I narrated the night's events, I was stunned by her reply. She said, "I didn't even wake up last night, let alone sit in the dining room. I didn't put the food in the freezer either. It was covered on the table." I couldn't believe her. I asked again, "Try to remember, you were sitting in the chair wearing white clothes." My mother asked if I had been scared. I hesitated. My mother realized something was wrong and told my father. My father brought a hujur, cleric, from the mosque. The hujur nailed 4 nails into the 4 walls of every room to lock the house. Since my mother was pregnant with my sister at the time, they didn't want to take any risks. but I still have many questions. Why did it appear to me that night? How did my food become so cold? Can you tell? Many days passed. My sister is now 5 years old. My cousin got married and moved elsewhere, so I had to sleep alone again. The nails the Hoosier put up were actually held by Scotch tape. They were later removed to clean the walls and thrown away. Since then, small incidents started happening again. A bookshelf next to my study table would suddenly shake for a long time. Yet for some reason, I wasn't afraid anymore. If I left my water bottle capped before bed, in the morning I would find it open. These things still happen to me. The next incident happened in January 2022, just after the Maghrib call to prayer. My father had gone to the mosque, and my mother had gone out for a walk with my sister. It was getting quite dark. To help you understand, I should mention that humans can perceive up to 210 degrees around them without turning their heads. While focusing on a specific point, the surroundings may not be sharp, but movements are visible. As I focused on my plate, I noticed something near my waist. Without turning my head, I tried to perceive what it was. Soon I clearly realized it was the head of a child standing right next to me, leaning in as if asking for food from my plate. Keeping my eyes fixed on the plate to avoid a direct, terrifying confrontation, I slowly backed away towards the kitchen door. I didn't share this with my mother immediately since I hadn't looked at it directly. Later, when I went back to the kitchen with her, I saw the plate lying on the floor, but no one was there. To check if it was an optical illusion, I stood in the same spot again, but the figure didn't reappear. Yet moments ago, I had felt it so vividly, a child looking at me, wanting something. I searched the entire house, but the child was nowhere to be found. Now, let me tell you my final and most terrifying experience. During my HSC test exams, I started praying more regularly. My father had a habit of calling me for Fajr prayers and wouldn't leave until I responded. One night, about a month after Ramadan, I went to bed normally. In my sleep, I heard my father calling me for prayer. I thought he would call a second time. But strangely, silence followed. As I stepped onto the floor, a powerful scent of attar, perfume, hit me. It was strange because the attar my father bought during Ramadan had finished days ago. I went to perform wudu, ablution. The further I moved from my bed, the fainter the scent became. But as soon as I re-entered my room, the intense fragrance returned. I dismissed it, thinking maybe my father had bought a new one. My bed was the type that had an empty space underneath. I stood for prayer. During the first raku and sujud, prostration, I felt as if someone had poured an entire bottle of attar on the floor nearby. During the second sujud, I noticed something in my peripheral vision, a movement under the bed to my left. My curiosity took over. After finishing the prayer while still sitting, I slowly leaned down to look under the bed. What I saw is hard for many to believe. In a faint, mysterious light, I saw a corpse wrapped in a white shroud, kafan, lying horizontally under my bed. A piece of the shroud was fluttering, the same movement I had noticed during prayer. I couldn't lift my head. My body felt incredibly heavy. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The smell of attar coming from the corpse was so overpowering, it felt intoxicating. It felt as if an invisible force was pinning me down. I was drenched in sweat. Reciting Almighty's name in my mind, I finally managed to jump onto the bed, leaving the mosquito net behind. I realized it wasn't even time for Fajr yet. Then who had called me in my father's voice? I played Ayatul Kursi on my phone, terrified by the thought of the corpse lying right beneath me. Was I hallucinating? A while later, my father called me again. This time I didn't smell the attar. When he entered the room, I told him I wasn't feeling well. I eventually fell asleep, but in the morning, I didn't have the courage to look under the bed. I asked my sister to check if there was any sack or object there. She said no. Who called me in my father's voice before dawn? Why was the scent of attar so strong? And how did that shrouded corpse appear under my bed? I still don't have the answers. To everyone listening, before you go to sleep tonight, check under and around your bed. Perhaps, like me, you might find a body wrapped in white, lying right beneath you. Incident 1. The Silent Passing of Rahim Master. The first incident dates back to my grandfather, Rahim Molla, who lived in a village in Narail. He was a respected primary school teacher, and his school was quite far from our home. My grandfather had a routine of walking back home after finishing his school duties. One day, while walking through a dense forest area that was notorious for local ghost stories, he was suddenly pushed with immense force by an unseen entity. He fell into a roadside drain. As he tried to get up, a pair of invisible hands pinned him down, trapping him. Fortunately, a few locals passing by heard muffled groans and the sound of a struggle. They rescued him and recognized him as Rahim Master. Though his family urged him to seek help from a spiritual healer, Hujur, he brushed it off. Gradually, his health began to deteriorate rapidly. It seemed fate had written his end in that mysterious encounter, and soon the respected teacher passed away. Incident 2. The Haunted Marsh and the Ill-Fated Trip. This story is about my uncle, Fupa, whom I never met but heard about from my mother. He was a physically strong, dark-complexioned man with a passion for night fishing. One night, he decided to go fishing in a marsh, Beale, that was famous for its fish but infamous for paranormal sightings. While fishing in the dim light of a torch, he saw something so terrifying that he immediately abandoned his gear and ran home. He was visibly shaken, and though he tried to act brave, he eventually confessed to my aunt, Fupi, that he had seen something horrifying. Despite the warning signs, he tried to remain mentally strong. Shortly after, while preparing for a medical checkup to go abroad, it was discovered that he had severe jaundice and liver failure. His health declined at an alarming rate, and despite being taken to Dhaka for better treatment, he passed away, leaving his dreams of going abroad behind. Incident 3. The Midnight Call and the Imposter Friend. This incident involves my father when he was a young student at a madrasa. My grandfather wanted him to become a hafez. One of the madrasa's traditions was for students to go out early in the morning to collect rice donations from the village. One morning, my father was awakened by a knock. He opened the door to find his close friend smiling, telling him it was time to go. Looking outside, my father saw what looked like the light of dawn and hurriedly got ready. As they walked, my father noticed something strange. His friend, who usually walked with an arm around his shoulder, was now keeping a significant distance. No matter how fast my father walked to catch up, the friend stayed ahead. Suddenly, my father realized it wasn't dawn, it was the bright light of a full moon. Furthermore, they were walking away from the village toward a graveyard. Sensing danger, my father tricked the entity by saying he forgot a sack, and turned back toward the madrasa. The entity followed him, urging him not to go back. When he reached the safety of the madrasa, my father challenged the entity. In an instant, the friend transformed into a pitch-black, shadowy figure with glowing eyes. "Since you've recognized me, I don't have to work as hard to take your life," it hissed, before vanishing in a rage. My father collapsed in shock and was found unconscious later that morning. My father eventually went abroad and spent most of his life there, passing away in Saudi Arabia in February 2016. I was in class 7 then, and had only seen him once in my life, when I was in class 5. The Incident 2020. The Haunted Marsh and the Spirit of Akash. This incident took place in late August 2020, when I was only 16 years old. To the west of our house lies a vast marsh, Beale, and beyond that is another village about 2.5 kilometers away. A road from near our house leads through the center of the marsh to an old pond, a notorious spot for gambling. Occasionally, I would join in. That day, 4 of us, Akash, Subrata, a senior named Palash, and I, planned to go. Akash was worried because his father had found out about his activities and was keeping a close watch. He asked me to go to his house and lie to his father, saying we were going bird hunting. His father agreed. We set out toward the pond, surrounded by waist-high paddy crops. By 7:30 p.m., the game was in full swing. Suddenly, the police arrived. We scattered in fear. After running for about 5 minutes, Akash suddenly collapsed on an ale, a narrow earthen path between fields. Palash and Subrata kept running, but when I realized Akash wasn't behind us, I went back. He was lying there, struggling to breathe. I held his head and asked what was wrong, but there was no reply. Suddenly he let out a long breath and went completely silent. He was gone. Palash and Subrata fled, leaving me alone with the body. I stayed because I was the one who had brought him from his home. Terrified, I saw lights and heard people approaching. Fearing it was the police, I ran. But no matter how much I ran through the muddy fields and sharp paddy leaves, I kept returning to the same spot where I had sat before. It was as if I was trapped in a loop. In my desperation, I saw a figure that looked like Akash. I thought he was alive and playing a prank. Then I saw a younger boy from our area, but as I approached him, he vanished into thin air. By 2 in the morning, I decided to cross a patch of land known as Taller Vita, the Palm Grove. It was a cursed place, where many had committed suicide by hanging from a mango tree. As I crossed the grove, I lost control of my body. I collapsed to my knees and started screaming and clawing at my own face and nose until I bled. Eventually, I managed to reach the road, drank water from a canal, and ran home. My parents were shocked to see my state. Soon the police arrived. Palash had falsely accused me of murdering Akash. I spent 6 days in custody, being interrogated and beaten. However, the autopsy eventually proved that Akash died of a brain stroke. Even after being released, the horror didn't end. One night, I felt someone lying next to me in bed. The room smelled foul, and I couldn't breathe. I turned to see Akash staring at me. He attacked me, breaking my finger before I lost consciousness and ended up in the hospital. The haunting continued for years. No matter which spiritual healer Kabiraj my parents consulted, Akash's spirit wouldn't leave me. One renowned Kabiraj finally said that the spirit was too obsessed and powerful to be banished. The only way to save my life was to send me far away, across the seas, before the next new moon, Amavasya. My parents desperately arranged for me to go to Libya, hoping I could eventually reach Europe. I am in Libya now, and believe me, it feels like living in hell. But I had to escape to survive. Today I present before you a story in my own narration. The natural beauty of the rural landscape is as stunning as it is silent and eerie during lonely times. In the rainy season, the land fills with water, and in the dry season, it turns into a vast empty field. The incident took place in a time when communication systems were not like today. I was told the exact location and real names, but considering the family's honor, I won't reveal them. I'll just say it was a village at the far end of Nikli Upazila. The story revolves around a simple household. The head of the family had passed away years ago. In the house lived an elderly mother, her son, and her daughter named Syra. Syra was a young teenage girl, beautiful and lively. Their house was at the very edge of the village, where settlements ended and jungle began. Right beside their house stood a massive ancient banyan tree. No one knew how old it was. Even the oldest villager couldn't say. People believed an unusual darkness always lingered beneath that tree. Villagers avoided going near it, especially after noon and at night. Since Syra's house was right next to it, strange things began happening. At first they were small. Unusual objects like vermilion-smeared soil or odd items would appear under the tree or in their yard. They ignored it, thinking it was superstition or mischief. But these were signs of something much worse. One afternoon, Syra's mother noticed Syra standing still, staring at the banyan tree. She wasn't responding. When shaken, she whispered in fear, "Mom, who is sitting under that tree?" Her mother reassured her, saying it was just the wind moving the leaves. But it wasn't her imagination. Soon after, strange noises began at night. Stones hitting the roof. At first, they thought it was rats or cats, but the sound was heavier, unnatural. Syra's brother Rafiq, a brave young man, went outside with a flashlight several times. He never saw anyone. Only the banyan tree stood there in darkness. But he noticed something strange. Whenever he shined the light, the branches moved violently, as if something was jumping between them. Then Syra began to change. The cheerful girl became silent and withdrawn. She stopped talking, stopped eating, and stayed in her room. Dark circles formed under her eyes. One day her mother secretly heard her talking to someone. Looking through the window, she saw Syra whispering to the outside. When asked, Syra said, "Can't you see? A woman in black is standing under the tree. She's calling me. She has a baby in her arms." But no one was there. Her condition worsened. She couldn't sleep, saying someone sat on her chest at night. She screamed in terror, saying, "They are coming to take me." Doctors found no physical illness. Medicines didn't help. One day, Syra collapsed. Foam came from her mouth, her body twisted unnaturally, and her voice changed into a deep male tone. She said, "You can't stop me. I will destroy her." At that point, the family realized this wasn't normal. They called the village imam. After examining her, he suspected something supernatural. The next day they searched the banyan tree and found a black cloth doll tied high up in the branches. It had red threads, strange symbols, and rusty nails stuck in it. Shockingly, it contained strands of Syra's hair. After that, Syra became extremely violent. It took multiple men to hold her down. Eventually they had to chain her. Then they called a respected spiritual healer, Huzur. He said, "You are late. This is not an ordinary jinn. It has been sent through black magic." As the Huzur recited verses, the environment became heavy and still. Suddenly, Syra lifted her head. Her eyes turned red, and she laughed horribly. She spoke, "My master sent me. I will not leave. I will destroy this family." The Huzur remained calm and brought the doll. Syra screamed in fear, "Don't burn it. That is my life." They lit a fire and burned the doll while reciting verses. As it burned, it didn't behave like normal cloth. It shrieked like a living creature. Black smoke filled the air. Syra writhed in pain and finally collapsed unconscious. The Huzur collected the ashes and instructed them to bury it before sunrise in a remote place. Warning, no matter what you hear, do not look back. On the way, they heard Syra's voice behind them crying, "Mom, don't leave me here." Her mother almost turned, but was stopped. They did not look back. After returning, Syra gradually recovered. She remembered nothing. But the story didn't end there. A few days later, a distant relative's house caught fire. The woman of that house, who was secretly behind the black magic out of jealousy, was seen laughing madly as her house burned. Her body was badly injured, and she lost her sanity. People later said the suffering she wished upon Syra returned to her. Syra eventually recovered fully, got married, and lived a happy life. The banyan tree no longer exists,